Welcome to another Secret Influence TV interview, and today I'm talking to Stephanie Bosch. Is that the right way of saying your name?
Yes, like
Bosch.
a machine.
Okay, so Stephanie is a management coach. Is that the correct description for your?
Yes,
Could you
exactly.
like to tell us a bit about? Welcome to the show, first of all. Thank you for giving your time today. And just to start, would you like to tell me a bit about what you do?
Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Stephanie and I'm a management coach, executive coach, and a speaker. So I speak about the dark side of leadership, the dark side of personality, and coach leaders also through this dark side, or help them explore their own dark side and then show up as the more authentic, more authentic selves, but to help them to become the better versions of themselves. So I wouldn't stop at telling people you are great just the way you are. Well, we're going to take it a step further, and like, you are great already, but there is moments where you might not be aware of potential performance risks, and we identify and manage those before they become a real problem.
Because that's what, get in touch with your dark side. That's what attracted me to talking further to you on the show, was because you were giving a talk on this subject at a conference. So go into that a bit more. Is that something that you think anyone can use, this technique, to be better leaders and to improve their sort of management skills?
Well, first of all, we all have a dark side. Everyone who pretends they don't have one, they need to come to see me to have a coaching. So it's relevant to all of us. However, the tool I'm using a tool that is backed up by science, that is actually coming from science. It's coming from a clinical background of the whole thing around dysfunctional maladaptive personality, and then was taking over to the workplace. You would need to have an accreditation, a certification. I'm certified with British Psychology Society as a registered test user to test for ability and personality testing. Have a master's degree in global leadership, which was mainly occupational psychology. So, I mean, to use the exact tool, you would need to be accredited, but obviously we can become more self-aware of our own dark side, of our own shortcomings, and then take action from there. So yeah, that's totally possible and relevant to all of us.
So some of it is having an understanding of your characteristics and your personality, and then using that to best effect, I guess.
Yeah,
would you? Sorry.
Well, it's not as sexy as it sounds. So dark side, I think, yeah, it sounds quite sexy, but what it is in a nutshell is how we define it is, how does your behavior change under pressure? So when you're stressed, when you're no longer aware of who you are, what you do. And most assessments would, and this is what happens when we take it from an internal perspective. We are not that objective with ourselves, obviously. So we're going to take it from a reputational perspective. So we see, how are you being perceived by other people? And these are the results when we are not aware of how does our behavior mess things up. When do we stand in our own way? When are we no longer communicating efficiently? When are we ruining our relationships and sometimes even our careers? So this is this behavioral change under pressure, where we usually have a blind spot, because the moment we get under pressure, we are no longer aware. We no longer function as we would in our everyday situations.
Okay, what do you think makes a good leader, and what sort of qualities? How can people, to be a better leader? I think everyone's got that potential, but what do you think makes the quality of a great leader, and how someone goes to adapt?
Well, I mean, this is a very popular question, and I think most people would like me to say 3 to 5 traits they can work towards to.
Sure.
But I would like to challenge this thinking, or this question, because I think, what is a great leader, and is a great leader as great in every environment, or does the context eventually matter? Because if we would, for example, have a look at Steve Jobs, who was perceived a great leader, he clearly had maybe not so great traits as well. Would he succeed in the same way in banking, or maybe in a more traditional environment like insurance, etc.? So I think the context does matter a lot. Then on the other hand, we have, different workplace settings, we have different job descriptions, we have different needs, and I think what is the job to be done? I mean, it does depend on whether you hire someone for a change environment to push through changes, to lead through change to uncertainty, or do you need someone to join and manage a functioning team already? So I think in a nutshell, the most important traits, characteristics that I would say we can go for is understanding that leadership is a responsibility, that you actually need to show up, which is already the second one, because research has found that the most or the long-lasting effects of dysfunctional leadership is absence. And this means leaders are there, they are physically there, but they simply don't do their job. And often companies come and say, you know what, we have a great leadership team, but when things get really rough, it doesn't work anymore. But we only need leaders when things get rough. So I think, how can we get the leaders to push their own boundaries, to manage their own dark side, and also play to their strengths, but also aware enough and emotionally intelligent enough to understand how everyone else is ticking around them, and to then get into diverse teams, so we don't have the same people, because this is what happens. We like to spend time with people who are like us, but rather find people who could complement your skills, your thinking, and who challenge you, and then create the environments to help people thrive.
So would you say with a leadership within an organization, the more visibility they have to their staff, for example, and more closer engagement they have internally, the more effective they'll be? So for example, some organization I worked for, the CEO has had roadshows of staff and met staff and had regular sort of communications through various online, offline channels. And other organizations have been more sort of remote. So, about visibility and engagement, as you're saying, is one way that to create better leadership.
Did this motivate you?
Yes, it did. It did. No, definitely. I think it's very effective. I think that's definitely had a massive impact on morale and with staff internally. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I think again it depends. So I think it's good if a leader can lead by example and show up. But on the other hand, if this would have happened in environments, my background is banking, so thinking back to 2009 when Lehman Brothers and the financial crisis happened,
sure,
it would have been nice to see a CEO coming, shaking hands, but on the other hand, we were scared or terrified of losing our jobs.
Of course.
I would assume most people would then have probably said, oh, what the hell are you doing here? Shouldn't you be doing your job? And
sure, of course.
So I think, yes, it is good if leaders show up and are therefore their employees. But I think, again, it does matter or depend on the context and the current situation. So, yeah.
Okay. And so one thing that I'm very interested in and talk about is sort of influence and how people can improve their skills in influencing, and also for leadership. I think there's an important part of that is be able to influence their audience, their stakeholders. So is that something you train people on, or you work with people on how to sort of influence how leadership can influence?
Well, I have 12 years sales experience, so
okay.
Influencing others is actually a massive part of this whole job, I guess. And in fact, I have developed a framework around how to show up and increase your own influence, which would, I call it the ditch your mask framework. Because
sure.
I truly I only believe that we are truly invincible and can influence others when we show hints of our authenticity, when we remove the mask that is often placed on us, when we try to play to the norms and try to fulfill everyone else's expectations and really show up in a way that is authentic, but again, in the best way possible. So I don't use that as an excuse to be a dick. Sorry. And this would include then, this is 4 steps. So the first one is explore your own dark side. And the second one is extract the hidden gems. So what is there that is great that you might not be aware of? Because often things that come easily to us, that others find interesting, that others are drawn to, we are often not aware because it's so normal for us that we just assume everyone else has it. And then showing up as your best self. And I think a very high component of influencing then others is the moment I am fully aware of who I am, how I tick, what my preferences are, that I then understand that others tick differently.
Sure.
And often when we're young, we get told, treat others the way you'd like to be treated, which I think is the worst thing ever, because if the other person has a different preference than I have, then this is totally not efficient. I mean, I'm German, so I love efficiency, right? So wouldn't it be better, I understand, figure out what the preference of the other person is? What problems do they have? What aspirations do they have? What needs do they need to be fulfilled? And this is usually pleasure seeking or pain avoidance. And then put my communication and all my being to use to help them get what they want. Because none of us is interested in any other person. You know, the most people want to know what's in it for me. So if I answer this question for you and have then a good enough reason why you should support my cause, to whom I lead, then it seems to be the most effective and easiest way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I went to a talk once and someone said that the worst thing you can do is try and appeal to everyone, because then you'll end up not appealing to anyone. And if you be yourself and be passionate and talk about what you know and what you believe in, then you'll attract people who are interested and follow you because they agree with you or like we say. But the worst thing to do is try and be vanilla in that middle, trying to sort of not being true to what you're trying to sort of mold down what you're saying to sort of grey in between. So I think that definitely resonates with me. One other thing is, with sort of relating to influence, is how would you think is important of motivating for leaders, or to motivate people? Do you think that's a necessary quality, necessary thing? So if you're going to be a leader, if you're going to influence people, is that having an aspect of motivation? Is that important? Is that
Well, I think everyone, or most people would say definitely. And I might make myself like really unpopular at this moment, but again, I go back to the question, what do we need a leader for?
Sure.
My job really as a leader to motivate you, or can I simply expect you to show up because it's part of your contract you signed? And is my job rather to serve you and keep you safe, right? But then I think, again, we need to take a step back. And nowadays, where a leader is not necessarily someone who has got a certain title in a corporate, a leader might also be someone who is a social influencer on Instagram, etc. So we have loads of informal leaders. And I think this is the big difference between a manager and a leader. As a manager, you can play by the books, or you're by the rules. You have a handbook, you follow a manual, and you do what needs to be done. As a leader, usually they are this inspiring person. People are motivated by the cause they are following. So this is usually, it is an element of a good leader. But again, how do I motivate you? And this is again going back to personality and preferences. Some people might be motivated by money. Some people might be motivated by having their own space, by you mind your business, I mind mine, don't get in my way, no micromanagement. Someone else might be motivated by remote work and spending time with their family. So again, what is possible for me?
Sure.
And how do I then how first of all, do I know what motivates you? Which goes back to, do I see you? And often this is already enough to really give another person the feeling that you truly care, that you see them.
Sure.
And I think then it is also being there, like backing up. I think in workplaces, most of us know that it's not the dreamland, right? You don't get everything you want. But I think the moment when we see someone truly cares and they have our back, if we need them, they are there. Then usually this is already enough, and we dare to open up and are more loyal. I give you an example. If do we have time for an example?
Yes, go for it. No, definitely.
When I first started working, so I did my it's a dual course where you study full time and you do an internship for 3 years, and you go through all the like departments in a bank. And after 3 years, I went into my first team. I took on my first client advisory role, and I was really motivated. And I had like that, like Darth Vader as a manager, right? So she was really on with the dark side. So she was like, join the force, but then, you know, it was around like Lehman Brothers, etc. So doing investment business was quite difficult. And the saying we had was, if you do it, you're already with 1 foot in jail.
Right.
That's not really motivating. And my boss, she said, you know what, if you make a mistake, that's your own fault. I won't back you up. Don't get me into trouble. Which ended up in us. No one was doing anything. We collected our contracts we made and we just dropped them in so we would hit target and wouldn't get in trouble, but that's about it. None of us wanted to dare to be top performer because, you know what, just rather play it safe. And then years later, I joined another company, I joined another team, and the guy there, in the meanwhile, I had totally lost any motivation to work in a sales environment. And well, I went back, I went to recruiting, and the guy said to us, you're a young team, you are allowed to make mistakes, we're going to figure it out, just be open about it, let me know, I have your back, and we're going to figure it out. It's okay if you make mistakes, just don't make the same mistake 3 times. And guess what? The motivation was 100% different. He didn't really motivate us in like individual ways, but he showed up and he had our back.
Sure.
Serving us.
I guess it's that sort of, you know, carrot and stick with managing people. And I read recently about a problem with violence in a young offenders institute, and they were cracking down in the papers and trying to be more strict to punish them, and it's just getting worse and worse. And then they got a leadership consultant in and looked at morale and the way they're managing, and they basically, instead of being stricter and stricter, they offered rewards for good behaviour, so rather than punishing bad behaviour. But they also punished very bad behaviour, but they offered rewards for good behaviour. And the levels of violence went down, and they found that basically the inmates responded better to incentives for good behaviour than punishment for bad. So it's interesting sometimes, you know, that how you motivate people, what you appeal to, what, you know, and whether you're sort of pushing them or pulling them in that way. So it's interesting.
And I think, I mean, in the end, all of us want to be seen, right? We want to belong, we want to be loved. And if someone sees us and truly values us as a person, what could be better than that, right? And I think especially with punishment, and this is one thing I find quite difficult about corporates. And I worked in corporates for 10 years, so I've seen quite a lot of corporates and how they work, and people get treated sometimes like a 3-year-old. Yeah, I mean, people have jobs, they have mortgages, they raise children, they buy houses, and then they walk into a corporate and suddenly they have no authority to do anything, and we treat them like children and punish them for things they've done. And then we expect them to take on responsibility suddenly in a culture that is based on fear. And I think this is quite difficult, you know. So yeah, I think reward does work actually quite well, and especially if you have a culture where you also know who is in your team. And I go back to assessing someone's dark side.
Do you think there's a challenge there with some of, you know, it's a bigger companies, as companies grow and grow and become bigger and bigger? Do you think, I mean, some of these corporates are obviously enormous, international companies, and you know, thousands of staff just, you know, in the UK. I mean, do you think part of the challenge of giving that freedom for staff at different levels to have responsibility of their role and progress, and, you know, manage that as a company grows, you know, such a huge scale? I think there's a challenge around that, you know, corporates to do it, you know, do it effectively. You know, there's that.
Sorry, to do what effectively?
Well, I think, you know, I think you said that some of these corporates, people have less are treated like, you know, adults in a normal way. You know, it's very it's less freedom to perhaps manage their role and adapt to themselves to what works best. But, you know, they're micromanaged perhaps, you know, and is that part of the nature of some of these, you know, corporates where they're so huge that the only way to almost, there's a challenge around, you know, how these companies, you know, they're so huge, you know, and but you know, it was inevitable to be a certain element of market management, and people lose that. When small organisations, I think it's a bit easier perhaps to have that freedom and that creative.
Well, I mean, I think, well, we always had big companies, and when you have small tasks or small areas of responsibility, which you tend to have in bigger organizations, you are less responsible for much, but really responsible for a small piece. If we go back a few years ago, where we had, you know, Ford, for example, this will be a thing of the past. We will have robots, we will have AI, etc. So they can do loads of the standard work. So I think the question would be, who do we need in the future who is non-replaceable? And some people say that only the people who really want to work. So wouldn't we need to challenge more creativity? Wouldn't we have to set rules? But would be remote work a thing of the future, or is it already here? And I think when we live together, when we work together, when we are in a group, we need a certain set of rules, and we need a certain set of code of ethics, but something we truly mean, right? Not just something we print out and put in the hallway where our customers see it. But I think part of it does also mean to understand how much risk can someone bring in, and especially on high up hierarchy positions, if we have someone who, and there are some bad eggs out there, I mean, I'm just putting it out there, but psychopathy is a thing in corporates as well. And these people are selfish, ruthless, and they don't care about the whole company, right? So sometimes what about assessing risk a person brings in? And also, what about then making a tough call and maybe letting people go who just don't fit in? And it doesn't mean that these people are in general bad who don't fit in a corporate environment, but maybe they would be better off in a different environment, in a startup scene, or, you know what I mean? So I think the culture is one thing, and I think within this culture we would need to enable environments also to step away from micromanagement, which could then happen to empower leaders that it's okay if employees make mistakes. But I think it's a whole different discussion, because most of the companies have a massive pressure to increase profits and to become more effective and more productive. So how can we solve this problem and then take it away from the bag of the people? So I think one good step, for example, would be to promote people who really like to lead and are good at leading people, rather than the ones who are very good at doing the job and promoting them to become managers. So I think there's different, so it was a quite broad answer, but I think there's different topics that needed to be touched in order to figure this whole thing out, because I mean, war for talent was already a topic 2007. I think most big companies have not yet realized that it's no longer employer market, but really talents can choose where they want to work.
Sure. And that's one of the other questions for technology. So with AI sort of trying to creep into sort of customer service and with communication internally, externally, being a lot more automated and obviously more sort of fluid between social media for social business, all these things. Do you find that that's making people in management positions more insecure? Does that affecting the way people manage or lead? Is that whole fast-paced change in technology, is that at all something that's an issue for or challenge for sort of people you coach?
Yeah, I mean my male target audience is male and around 45 or older, so they are not the generation who would usually be so grown up with WhatsApp, etc. So for them, obviously managing a young team,
Sure.
I mean, I get all right. Like if someone calls me, my phone is not close by, but it's always on silent mode.
Sure.
And I don't really like people calling me. If I have an appointment, that's fine. But so it's a very different way of me working than those guys who are picking up the phone and having meetings. And I think there will be challenges because you have different generations at work. You have, especially in Germany, digitalization is, oh boy, that's so far behind. We are still talking about it without implementing it. And I think the UK is so far ahead already. But again, we face very different challenges then. How do we communicate? Do we communicate solely in emojis? And it's very easy to hide behind an emoji, but as a real leader, do I need to see and make sure how my employee is really feeling? Or do I just reply and, you know what I mean? Like we have the option of voice messages, etc. So I think it will change a lot, and it does matter how we communicate. But I still think the most important aspect is that we see the other person and don't forget to reach people. And it doesn't matter whether you do this, for example, with customers. In earlier days, you would have like a banner ad or a TV ad or, whatever. And this was targeted to the reader or to the buyer. Social media is the same. But I think the challenge we face is we get a very high tolerance nowadays for bullshit. Everyone is just presenting themselves in the better or the most appealing way to cut through this stuff and see, are you okay? To really have the conversation of what is going on. Are you all right? We have Mental Health Awareness Week, and I think next week. And I talk to people who do suicide prevention with corporates I think there's loads of other challenges we need to face, which will be more hidden even after using mainly technology to communicate.
Sure.
Having said that, I think there was also there's a very big stigma around certain topics in corporate. So
yeah, no, I think anything that opens those discussions is a good thing. I think because my thoughts are that with, for example, social media is that they're all tools that we have those options to use. But I think that one of the challenges is that obviously is an increasing distraction. We have so much we have now. There's more expectation to use things. There's more distraction. There's more. It's all a challenge to our time and our sort of energy. And it's almost keeping up with those aspects.
And I just want to quickly say one thing about it, because I think especially the non-informal leaders who really show up for a really important cause, who pick themselves and who show up on social media, for them it gets really, really difficult to get the attention and get through this noise. And yes, that's a big challenge, obviously. But on the other hand, the potential reach is so much bigger than it used to be, right? So you can connect with people from all over the world.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, as thinking like the traditional channels like newspaper, for example, can have hundreds of thousands of readership. But if you look at some of the social media, it goes in the millions. So it's you have to sort of engage. I think nowadays, with those channels, if you're going to communicate, certainly if you're looking at the younger demographic, you've got to communicate on the audience, on channels that they use, and some of so the social media like YouTube, does have millions compared to some of the traditional channels which are more sort of 100,000. So okay, well, coming towards the end of our interview today, but just so if anyone wanted to get in touch with you, how was the best way of doing that? And I know you've got your website and there's some great articles around exploring your dark side and management and the leadership, which are fascinating. So how will people get in touch with you or find out more?
Well, so the easiest way is it's exploreyourdarkside.com, and it's Explore Your Dark Side on everywhere, like on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere you can find me via Explore Your Dark Side. If someone is typing in Stephanie Bosch, I am not the one who's playing the Indian instrument, so that's not me. But apart from this, I should show up.
Okay.
I think LinkedIn or my webpage would be the easiest way to connect.
Great. Okay, well, just listen, anything else you want to add? Any final words? We'll look to go.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me, and it was a true delight. It was a pleasure. And yeah, I hope that so many more people are, well, not necessarily keen, but really dare to explore their dark side, because I think this is not what we should be scared about, or we aren't scared about. I think most of us are more scared of their own greatness. So I hope people do dare and show up and are ready to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I'm certainly going to explore my dark side. So if you if you've enjoyed this, do subscribe, do share, do leave some comments, and there'll be another broadcast soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.